The climate crisis is a global problem. That's a fact. But it's only human and reasonable to wonder who's really to blame for it, who caused it, who should be pushed to actually solve it. My name is Anubha Bhonsle and I'm dedicating this episode of the Climate Explainers to talk about climate equity or climate inequity. Now, these words get thrown around so very often by politicians, presidents, diplomats. Essentially, climate equity means fair distribution of the benefits and burdens of climate change. This episode is going to have a strong India and a global South focus. Now, global North and global South are, broadly speaking, terms used to describe economic and political divisions between countries. So, these developed countries would be global North, and these on your screen are global South. India is a global South country. Now, on climate change, there are major fault lines between the two. Historically, the global North has been releasing greenhouse gases by utilizing the planet's resources, particularly fossil fuels, for far longer than the global South. It's also a key reason why they are considered more developed. The US, for example, has emitted more carbon than any other country, accounting for 29% of historical emissions. Following closely are the 27 countries of the European Union, plus the UK, responsible for 22% of global CO2 emissions. On the other hand, global South countries like India and Brazil have contributed only 3.9% and 1.1% respectively. African countries have had relatively minimal emissions, 3.3% combined for 54 countries in that continent. Now, away from history, we must remember corporations and governments from the global North have exported their climate footprints, setting up factories abroad, contributing to employment, yes, but also deforestation or unsustainable agriculture in the global South. Now, to add salt to the wound in a sense, global North countries are pressuring the world to modify habits and practices for a greener world. In the global South, this would mean countries compromise on industrialization and economic growth. In India's case, it looks like global pressure to cut down on fossil fuel-based energy very fast. Now, India is definitely listening. Renewable electricity is growing at a faster rate in India than any other major economy. New capacity additions are on track to double that by 2026. But there is a nuance here that coal-based energy can be produced at scale. It's cheap for millions of people who need and deserve it. And that nuance should not be missed when this global pressure is applied, say, at a global climate summit.
Leaders in emerging economies must commit to reaching net zero as close as possible to 2050, and again, the limit they should all aim to respect.
Another discord is the contrast between past emissions and future emissions. Developed countries have responsibility to make up for past emissions. Developing countries such as China and India, which are still experiencing growth in emissions that will continue for at least a decade, if actually not more, have the responsibility to make up for future emissions. All of these levers, who polluted in the past, who's polluting now, and who will pollute in the future by choice or by necessity, bring us to a very key principle: common but differentiated responsibility. It simply means all countries have a responsibility to combat climate change, but this responsibility should be proportionate to their contribution to it. India has repeatedly articulated what this could look like. The primary responsibility for reducing greenhouse gas emission rests with the developed world. the emissions of developing countries are still very low and need to grow to meet their future development needs. Yes, Global South countries need to transition to sustainable pathways and curb future emissions, but they do need financial and technical support from the Global North for this. This, in fact, has been a mainstay of the G20 Sustainable Finance Working Group under India's G20 presidency. Think of the last as an ecological debt that the Global North owes the Global South. Do you agree or not? Well, I definitely want you to weigh in on this debate, so let's chat, talk on what a just blueprint for climate action could really look like. You know how to get in touch. If you've been watching, thank you for all your time and thank you for all your attention.